So I finally got my new contacts today, and got more ordered, so I will be able to be good for a little while again on seeing. Um, and apparently, part of the issue was the astigmatism that I never heard that I had, but apparently that's a thing, has changed and might have had something to do with why my contacts were kind of jacked up ever since I got them last year. I don't know. But I finally got new contacts, so I'm happy there. Um, Kind of a weird day though. I came over here to my brother's house to potty his dogs at like 5:30 this morning so I could go or come back over here after my appointment. And then I got up and walked my dogs and then went to my doctor appointment and then came over here and then took these guys on a walk and got about a little over 2.5 miles in between the 5 dogs. So it's good, but I'm kind of tired because they 4 of the 5 pull real bad, um, and these two are the worst on that. And we went almost a mile and a half. But the bonus is they're pretty passed out now. The other one's on the other side of the room. Um, but yeah, they're good now. I went to Five Below to get a couple makeup things that I was thinking about. And the stuff I was looking at was at like the bottom shelf. And so I'm squatting down and looking through things. And this girl comes over and it's like within a couple feet of me. It's like, why are you standing so close? And then the group that she was with, there was another lady and another little kid. They came over and were like I could have elbowed any of them just because they were that close on any side, right? Except for I was facing the display, and then they're like behind me and around me, and it's like, this isn't cool. I don't like this. And then I kind of realized that I was kind of shrinking myself again. It's like, I bet if I wasn't shrinking myself at that moment, that might have, prevented some of that. If I actually work on owning my space rather than somehow ending up almost apologetic for taking up space once again. So then it's like, okay, so where's this coming from? And it's more family bullshit. And yeah. So yesterday, my mom was getting ready to go to a sleep study. And she put a load of towels in the washer before she left. And it's like, normally this would be no big deal, right? But since I'm setting boundaries and trying to figure out where the energy leaks are coming in at, it's more of an issue because like I'm seeing how like these little things are ultimately her way of, kind of poking and trying to figure out how she can get back in and get access to my energy again. In the past couple of days, I have noticed that she has been hovering a lot more closely than she's done for a while. It's like, what's that all about? So I don't know exactly where it started. But I know yesterday she made a comment about telling me to put the towels from the washer into the dryer. It's like, why did you start them before you left? And I know and knew then it was specifically because she was trying to get at me, right? And despite that, I went ahead and was checking the stuff anyway. And I'm not sad that I did or mad that I did or anything like that, because I found some of my towels in there and I don't want my towels in with their stuff, because it was like their bathroom rugs and they smelled like pee. And so they use like the little detergent packages that are like really cheap and off-brand shit, and I don't think they do worth shit, honestly. And I probably put a bit more detergent in when I wash stuff, but I would rather my stuff smell like detergent than anything else. And whether that be dog or, if my dad has something that's ended up in my stuff somehow, yeah, that's not an issue now. That was more a previous thing, because when I wasn't minding my boundaries and all this stuff, then it's like we had like just 3 laundry baskets. We just would throw stuff in, and then whoever got around to doing laundry would, or needed something out of it, would start a load or something, and we just go that way. Problem was, I talked about my dad's stuff stinking, and that was the case. So like I had like 5 towels in this load that my mom had washed, that, to be honest, was really small of a load anyway, but it had like 3 of their little bathroom rugs in it, because they're not real big, but they smelled funky, and then like a few other odds and ends. But it's like, when I opened the washer, it's like, dude, it still smells like piss, and I'm not okay with that. So I pulled their rugs out, and like the stuff that I could immediately see was theirs, and I threw it in the dryer. And then I put my stuff back in, even though like I think I added 1 shirt that I had from, this last time we dyed my hair, because I have like some painting shirts that I will use for when we're playing in bleach or hair color. And I don't want to wash it with the regular clothes, because I don't want to get hair dye on the other laundry. But yeah. So since I have stopped mixing the clothes and all that stuff, they've definitely noticed. And I think my mom's kind of been annoyed at it. And it's really weird, because you wouldn't think that was the case, except I have enough clothes that I could go a while without needing to do laundry, honestly. So it was usually her stuff that would come around sooner. And so she would start a load or whatever. And it's like, on the one hand, it was getting my laundry clean sooner. But on the other hand, it would get us to the point of, well, now she did something for me, and thus it became, now it's my time to do something for her, and just that constant back and forth. So I'm trying to disconnect all of that. And, it's really this whole boundaries thing, and realizing where some of that comes in at. Because even then, like, if you wear something that went through with their stuff, it's like there's still that energetic connection of their stuff versus my stuff. So I'm much more particular about setting the boundaries and maintaining the boundaries. And I know a lot of this sounds ridiculous, because I'm 41 years old and had to move back in with my parents when I was getting divorced. And then this stuff just kind of like, it just started being a thing, because there for a while, like if I had like the brightly colored stuff, because I do wear a lot of like these brighter colors and whatnot, the pinks and the purples and all that stuff, and then my mom has a bunch of that stuff too. So it was like, that would usually be the load that we would combine. And then it became a thing that just since the washer and dryer were so big that, we could just knock more out at one time. And it's like, no, I've since realized it's not near as helpful as it sounds in theory. In theory, it sounds like a good idea, but in practice, it feeds right back into that codependency thing. And now I've done this for you, so now you owe me in some kind of way and I will make sure to beat you over the head with it whenever I'm ready to have you do something for me. Such as yesterday, she's done it the past 2 days. She's really upset that my brother's family is moving away, right? And I get it. And of course, there should be some grieving time in a normal, healthy relationship anyway for the change of situation. Last night, she proceeds to tell me that she really just wants to tell them not to go and tell them all the ways it's going to harm Gracie because, she's always been around family, and then now she's not going to be around family, and then she's trying to pull me into it and saying that unless I board my dogs, I'll never be able to see them again. It's like, the reason she went there was because my brother has mentioned several times, you guys have a camper. There are campgrounds around there. Surely you could come visit. So keeping that as a point of staying connected in some kind of way, right? But then my mom's like, well, unless you board yours, it's like, why is that where you went right there? And she said something about they won't make that drive. It's like, Ziva was with me literally every time I went to and from Alabama. And there was a span of time where that was pretty regular. And, at one point, I was making trips back and forth at least once a month. And Ziva was always with me. And the other two, in the 8-9 month span of time that they had to stay with my ex when I was not there, he still brought them back up. And granted, he's not useful on caring about anybody else but himself. So if he had to stop for a potty break, he wasn't necessarily making sure they were getting a chance to get out and walk around either. It was just all about him, and then, whatever on them. So what she was talking about, it's like, plus they made that trip when the last time that I was moving back. It's like, they were fine. As long as they get out and get to stretch at some point in time, long trips are fine with them, but it was just, she was just trying to turn it to pull me into the drama. And that really hit home when I called her out on why would you start a load of laundry, let alone towels, because that's not anything urgent. There's a ton of towels in that house. I have like all my own from, when I was living elsewhere, and she got me a few others when I moved back for whatever reason. I don't know why she did. Mine were all purple. Now I have some pink and blue ones too, which I like color, so it's not a problem for me. But at the same time, it's just I didn't really necessarily need them. But there they are. So whatever. But then there's like a ton that they have, and then there's even more still because we have some in the garage that are specifically for, washing dogs or whatever. Some of the old crappy ones. So we don't have as many in the house. But it's like, that's not an urgent need. And I mentioned that. It's like, why would you start a load of laundry before you are literally going to a sleep appointment? And it was a sleep study appointment. And it was literally just to see if I would go along with it. And I shouldn't have, but I did. And this is where it gets stupid. Because at one point, I was sitting in my office last night, and I randomly get a message from my dad asking if the stuff in the dryer is done. I was like, what, the towels? He's like, yeah. I was like, did you need something in there? He said, no, Mom was just asking about it. It's like, of course she was, because she was trying to figure out if I was going along with her bullshit again. And for whatever reason, I ended up going along with it last night. And it's literally just that little simple stuff. And like, what I'm realizing is I really have to be especially mindful of the stupid stuff that she's coming up with, because I am not 100% clear on where all the little energy leaks that she's getting in are coming in at. But clearly I got to work on that, because that's not going to work out for me. Yeah, but she was immediately trying to pull me into her drama and, get me all, well, I'm never going to be able to see Gracie again unless I board the dogs. And it's like, I'm pretty confident I could work something out if I wanted to. And the bigger thing is, I probably will not go with my parents if they go because I really don't want to spend that kind of time with them. Oh, weird thing. My mom mentioned yesterday before she left that, okay, so my brother and his family are leaving or the plan is for them to leave on April 18th to move. And so on April 21st, my mom and dad are taking my aunt and my grandma to Pigeon Forge to visit my grandma's sister, one of the older ones. And I was kind of like, okay, whatever. And, I'll probably end up with their dog. I can't, they might take her. I don't know. But yeah, that's going to be like a weird thing, because that'll be the least amount of connections in the area that I've had in a long time. But maybe I'll happen into some kind of magic and get the hell up out of here by then. I don't know. Kind of a weird thing that I noticed last night. So I posted the video I did yesterday, and I randomly scrolled down, and this one video, I think the one I did on the 21st for whatever reason, had 607 views, and I was just like, what the fuck's going on? And I think where that came in at was I probably commented on another video. And then I've seen where my comments sometimes come through as Mystic Fuchsia and other times come through as the Family Disappointment. So I don't know if it had something to do with how it came through somewhere for a comment that I left on somebody's page, or if I just tagged the right people or something. But it was like, holy shit, that's a lot of views for that one video. And the ones around it were 17, I think was the max that I noticed. It was like, that's weird. But I still had that moment where I had to kind of process through it last night. And there was a moment where I got all teary again because that was really overwhelming. And that's probably where some of that shrinking today came in at. Because, there's this thing with my mom that's still going on and still, her still trying to be an issue. And then there's this other thing where I'm doing the thing I feel like I'm supposed to be doing for whatever reason, and every now and then something comes up and something ends up with a lot of a lot of views, and it's like, oh, okay. But then I have to face that part of me that's kind of inclined to want to shrink. And then, of course, my mom's been doing this stuff that's literally trying to pull me into her drama. So I think I have tended to shrink myself on that end just to try to avoid her paying any attention to me, which has not worked. So that's a big thing. It's like shrinking does not work. Yeah. And the deal with the people at Five Below, it's like, once I left the store and was still thinking about this whole thing, it's like, so I need to own my space and act like I belong wherever I go, rather than thanks for allowing me to exist in this space, because that's when people kind of run over the top of you and like, oh, well, you aren't going to take this space, so allow me to impose myself in your area, right? So, yeah. I think it's just more layers of the same stuff that I'm trying to work through and get more solid in setting the boundaries and maintaining the boundaries. But the silly thing is, like, knowing after, like, I really realized that shit with my mom last night. I mean, where my dad asks me if the stuff in the dryer is done, like it's some kind of pressing thing, like he needs a towel out of it or something. And it was literally just because my mom asked if I had. It's like, yeah. But I finished it out. I got my stuff where it doesn't smell like pee, and, I allowed their stuff to go through smelling like pee because they don't care. Why should I? Yeah. And just trying to figure out, like, other spaces that I need to be more firm on that. Oh, today I started my day with, salting myself in the shower so I can kind of get that out of my my aura, if you will. And I guess it probably didn't entirely work, since I was still finding myself shrinking elsewhere. It's like, I don't know fully what that is entirely about, but I need to spend more time with it, I guess. Because I sure as shit need to stop doing that. Especially when it allows for other people's icky energy to come into my space and, yeah, just be imposing. And that's the biggest thing. I think that's what's so aggravating about it, is because it's literally like my parents are, it's like a constant poke, poke, poke to kind of see if they're able to affect me or not, right? So like last night when I came over here again, for the last time for the evening, I got back home at like midnight, and my dad was in bed. The dogs barked when I got back because, they saw, since my mom's car is in the shop, I have to take the other one, which is fine, except for there's no garage door opener that works. I have to get out of the car and use the keypad. But since I park in front of the garage when I'm doing that, so I don't have as far to walk in the dark, since I can't pull into the garage, the dogs went off because they saw the lights. So, kind of annoying. But then I come inside, and he was in bed before I left. And randomly when I get back, he meanders out that way again. It's like, I'd stopped in the laundry room to get my stuff out of the dryer, the few things of mine she'd thrown in that I had rewashed and, put them in the dryer. So my dad comes out of their room, like meanders down to the, I don't know, he wasn't right at the laundry room door on the other side, because that one goes through and has two doors. But he was like just out of sight. And he said something, how's it going, or whatever. And it's like, whatever, why are you up? Why are you up and speaking to me in this moment, kind of a thing. That's exactly how I was feeling. That just sounds like shitty, I'm sure. But I guess at this point I'm kind of over caring about how it sounds, because I know it's literally just them trying to get access to my energy. So he comes in and it's like, how's it going? It's like, I think I said fine and left it at that. And I was done with the towels, so I went into the kitchen because I was going to have a bowl of cereal. So he meanders around to the laundry room. The one door is in the kitchen, the other door is in the hallway, right? So he meanders around the living room into the kitchen through the other room, or the other entryway. And I was in there, and he repeats himself. And I said, fine. He said, okay. I was like, I responded to you already. And he said, I didn't hear you. It's like, so then just this conversation, the fact that, I've had to repeat myself, and I don't know how much I believe that he didn't hear me, because there have been times where he hears like obscenely quiet things that, we're trying to, since he claims he never hears anything, and then, if we talk low at some point when he's nearby, and then he hears it, it's like, this makes me wonder how honest you're being, and you can't ever hear anything, and how deaf you think you are and want to tell everybody you are. It's like, selective, so sitting here talking about this now, it's like literally that repeating myself thing at all was enough to get him a reaction, which is literally all he wanted, right? So he did his duty to my mom with asking me about the laundry and then coming back around. It is literally just pick, because they're trying to get access again. And I've never been more irritated with anybody in my life, I don't think, because I'm really sick of this bullshit. And it's so much more so now that I really realize what's going on and how deep it goes, and, all these ways that I've been lax about having boundaries, and then, then they get back in there, and then they start, watched a tarot reading, Nordic Light, at one point in time. She said, it's like there's something going around you and just poking you, trying to get access to your energy, and so that it can get its hooks back in. It's like basically like that. It's like I've never heard something that hit more home than when she said that. And it's like, that's literally all they're doing, is like they poke and poke and poke until I get enough of a response that, they kind of feel like their connection is reestablished and they can siphon my life force energy out of me once again, right? Oh, man. I know that this is serving a purpose, like the time that I have there now, and I am grateful for the fact that I am more and more learning how to disconnect, like truly disconnect from it. Because for the most part, I do pretty good at it. I'm not sure where all hell went loose this time. And I don't think it's any one spot. I think that's why it's kind of been a thing. Like the other day, my mom walked into my office when I was in there and like just comes in and shuts the door behind her. And it's like, what? She doesn't normally do that. But the fact that she did it that time, it really makes me think that she wouldn't be above going into my space and like looking through my stuff. Like, if I had to be honest, I absolutely think she's not above that. Which is why, not that long ago, I went ahead and, I've talked about how I don't feel like she necessarily would try to go through my computer or anything. And it's not like there's really anything on there she'd be interested in, except for the YouTube thing. That'd piss her off. But only from the standpoint of, you made me look bad. And it's like, honestly, that's probably where this little energy glitch came from this time around, was because I talked about the other day, I think it was Sunday, how I was over at the school doing a video in the parking lot and the off-duty sheriff stopped to check on me. And it was fine, but I did totally like burst into tears on the video because it's the first time I actually really owned up about, this thing that I was doing to somebody that I didn't know, and I told him, it's like, this is like one of the only places I can go where my family's not in the middle of what I'm trying to do. And he said, understood, not a problem. I think it's still the fact that it, I guess, let somebody in, if you will, on what I was doing. And like, I've been really protective of this whole thing that I've been doing, right? And like I've said many times, I'm not actively trying to grow it. I feel like the views that do show up, the people that subscribe to my channel or whatever, I feel like most of that comes in from like when I've commented on other pages, or other videos or whatever, and somebody sees my screen name, however it shows up, whether it's Mystic Fuchsia or The Family Disappointment. Like I said, I've seen it both ways, and I'm not sure why it sometimes goes one way and why it goes the other way. But I kind of wonder now if maybe just the deal. The Basset is over here snoring, so if you hear that, that is her. The other one's not. No, she is breathing heavy, though. They had a good walk. They don't get regular walks normally, so try to give them a little more time out of their cages so we can get some exercise, make them tired before they have to go back in the cages. Since I'm not over here with them as much as they would like, but it is what it is. But yeah, I think it was probably the fact that the cop got in, right? To my energetic space, and I owned up to the thing that I'm not lying about to anybody else. It's just literally just not letting anybody know. And there's 3s at the top, so maybe I'm onto something there. Which is kind of funny because when I pulled into the school parking lot where we walked today, or I walked with these guys today, different school than I walked mine earlier. It's over by the high school. And I pulled into the parking lot, and I noticed when I was taking the keys out of the ignition that the trip mileage was at 111.1. So there's my 1111 again. Yeah. But anyway. Yeah, I'm gonna have to spend some time thinking about that, but I think it was probably the fact that I allowed somebody outside of myself, beyond my brother and my cousin and, the few people in the class that know anything about what I'm doing. It was like the first time I let somebody out of the closer circle know what I was doing. And I think that's probably part of where all of that came in at, to be honest. And of course my mom's been all pissy because, she found out that my brother and sister-in-law are taking Gracie away from her. And that's how she looks at it. It's like she literally shut them down on anything else that they were talking about as, Jen's job situation or whatever. It's like nothing else matters. She knows it is only to take Gracie away from her. It's like, It's like we are all in agreement that the kid is much better when she's not around her parents. So, I've been telling my brother for a long time, it's like that kid picks up on energy kind of like I do. It's like maybe not the full extent. I said, but like the biggest thing I always noticed, because she used to spend more time at our house than she did with her parents, and of course they were working for the state and were gone with that for like a ridiculous amount of time because they frequently had overtime and all sorts of other stuff, and then they were running all the time and she didn't always want to run, so they would let her stay with us and whatnot. The pandemic was actually a great thing for this family because her parents were able to work from home, so we'd still see her during that time, but not as much as we had when we had her all the time and they were going downtown every day of the week. But like the biggest thing that I said back then, to my brother and Jen, it was she picks up on everything, and like the only thing, okay, one of the things I think that it took the kid to make me really realize this, I think, was it's like if the kid would pick up on how my mom felt toward me, and there would be times that she would like just go off on me, like the little kid, the little 2-year-old, like she would have I don't know what that noise was. Sleep woofing. But yeah, like this little 2-year-old kid there at one point would like literally just start acting out toward me. And I think that was one of the things that really made me realize that she was, playing in on this whole energetic thing as well. So like she could sense how my parents felt toward me, and then, she would start, being, since they wouldn't say anything, they'd just be sitting there quietly with their bad energy, bad feelings in my direction, and then she would start demonstrating it, and I would just leave the room, because there's nothing else I could do about it. But then eventually, when she was not around my parents as much, then that kind of simmered. And, even the ordeal with my grandpa being in the hospital was really good for the family on that end because, mom, life stopped because her daddy was in the hospital. And, every time he was in the hospital, she was living there with him. And it was basically just to siphon her life energy and give it to him to try to make him last another day or whatever. And in that time, my brother and I started working together a lot more on, doing the things that grandma was no longer available to give a shit about doing for the kid because her daddy was having a problem. And when the kid's only been around us, she's great, so my brother said that he feels like when I started really being better about setting boundaries with the family, he says he feels like Gracie's picked up some of that too. And, you know, because she had these neighbor kids that were kind of, two of them, okay, there's one neighbor that has 3 kids. None of them have been taught any kind of boundaries at all. The older 2 boys, there's a middle son, an older son, and then there's a younger daughter. The boys, I think, are both autistic, and combined with the not being taught any kind of boundaries, you know, she had one of them came over one day and didn't like that she said she didn't want to play and tried to pull her out the door, you know, like grabbed her by the head, put her in a headlock to pull her out the door, you know. So they got to a point where she wasn't allowed to answer the door anymore, because if it was him, well, they weren't going to do that. But she got a lot more comfortable in saying, no, I don't want to spend time with you. And at one point, I guess she booted him off of Roblox and really got to him then. But like, just how he said her willingness to deal with them seemed to change too. Like, the more we were spending time together, she was less in the mood to deal with the bullshit that came from the neighbor kids. And so that's a good thing, right? So, you know, of course, it's still her grandma. So, you know, when grandma came over to see her and was crying on her head practically, you know, because my mom, there's nothing about this that she's going to allow it to not be about her. That's just how she is. Everything is about her all the time, you know, and that's one of the things that came up back in December after my grandfather finally kicked the bucket. My mom was like, well, we need to plan something for Gracie. I know we want to protect her and blah, 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 but we can't protect her forever and that kind of bullshit. It's like, just the whole presentation of it. And it was in the group conversation. So, of course, that's the one with my mom and dad and me and my brother and his wife. And Jen was just like, yeah, no. Where was this concern when you were trying to make her go around, you know, like my grandfather when he was in the hospital? She kept trying to get the kid to be there around the old man that was literally just siphoning the life force out of anybody that he could, right? That's literally all his last year's work, was sucking the life out of everybody else, making everything about him. And yeah, you know, and it's so, my cousin and I had this conversation the other day when we were skating, where, you know, like my mom and grandma talking about how healthy he looked at this one picture when my cousins were all in like the single digits, I think. And, you know, he was like, I wanted to say he was well over 300 pounds. And it's like, that wasn't healthy looking right there. It was sufficiently having his life force catered to by everybody beneath him. And yeah, it wasn't because that he was ever at a healthy space. You know, he was never a healthy human. He was very extremely toxic. And, you know, that's, oh, I took the blanket off. Now it got her attention. They're both up. Yeah, but it was like, he wasn't healthy looking. Like, he never did anything to take care of himself. All he did was stress about everything until, you know, and my mom and grandma and, you know, my aunts too, basically just enabled the bad behavior. And because nobody stood up to him and told him to get his act in gear, it wasn't working out, he just went along with it. Or they went along with it. So it's just like, seeing that on a small scale makes the things that are going on in the world on a grand scale makes so much more sense. And it's literally just enabling the toxic behavior doesn't get rid of the toxic behavior by any means. It caters to it. So like the whole patriarchal system that, you know, makes most of us feel rejected in some kind of capacity, thanks to religion and, you know, of course, politics. But yeah, religion and politics are fuck buddies. I'll go back to that point. You know, so everything that happens on the large scale is just the smaller scale playing out on the grand scale, right? So the boundaries thing, what I have learned is when you're able to set boundaries and maintain them sufficiently enough, then the bad behavior isn't okay. And like, I think part of my issue on that is too that I won't always speak to it. You know, the other day, okay, in Sunday's video, I said that I didn't want to spend the time with my mom, my aunt, and my grandma, but I didn't verbalize it except for in the video. However, when I did verbalize it in the video, you know, then I got a message that evening from my mom when she was over at my grandma's house with everybody else, saying that Monday was off because nobody was feeling well. It's like, oh, pity. You mean I don't have to spend time with them? Hey, that's great. You know, but it's like I have to at least speak to the point in this space, I guess, even if I can't do it to somebody's face. Although I'm getting better about being able to say no to their faces. Still has its moments. But something about speaking it is apparently what makes it sink in better, I guess. You don't have to be this close. Thank you. Now I got a butt pointed at me, but I'll let him go play. This room is kind of chilly. But yeah. And maybe it's that there's still the energetic connection at some level, but when I am able to speak it, even in this YouTube space where I'm just talking to my phone, maybe that's enough to convey the message to them, you know, get the, I don't know, the cold bug or whatever. I don't know what their situation is. I think it's mainly allergies going around at this point in time. But yeah, like have everybody have problems all at once. Because I was like, I really don't want to do that. You know, but then finding these other spaces where I'm not as good at doing the things. Like when my mom came into my room the other day and was like, I just want to tell them not to go and blah, blah, blah. It's like, they're going to go. I know they are, but, you know, they're trying to drag me into it with, well, you're never going to get to see Gracie again unless you board your dogs because they won't be able to make that 800-mile trip. It's like, they made lots of trips from Alabama and back, so, I don't know what you're talking about, but I really don't want to make that trip with you, to be honest. So, yeah. What I really want to do is, you know, find my way the fuck out of here and not have to deal with it anymore. So, got to work on that, I guess. Just a little troll action hanging out from my layers. Speaking of that, I have a box of trolls that I still need to wash. I know this sounds so stupid. I keep moving this box. Like, when the tub's dry, it'll be in the tub. But then I go to take a shower, then the tub's wet for a couple days. And then it's like, back and forth. But it's like, I need to clean it, decide what I'm keeping of it, and do something else with it and get it out of that space. I feel like some of what I've been doing this past year, you know, because I talked about like the stuffed animals when I did that. Like, I feel like, God. Okay, so the stuffed animals. I realized back in the fall that I had like 5 totes of stuffed animals, and it was like, why the fuck do I have this many stuffed animals? Yeah, I'm not using them. They're in storage. Why are they in storage? And so I started cleaning them up, and it was like, this should be really easy to get rid of these. I can donate them somewhere, right? And they all smelled funky because they've been in storage for however long. But I started cleaning them up. And I think the big thing, I was just going to get rid of all of them. And then I picked up this one little stuffed puppy that I remember carrying that thing around all the time when I was little. And like, I had a special attachment to that one. I picked it up, and it's like just the short time that I held it for a minute, I was like, I just started bawling. It's like, so I'm feeling like, I've talked about this on here before too. I feel like at a time that I was a very open channel and didn't know that I needed to have any kind of boundaries, because I didn't know that people might literally latch onto your energy just to suck the life out of you. That whole energetic vampire thing. It's very legit. Dogs are feeling frisky now. But it's like, I realized that since it was basically, being starved for affection otherwise, and, shame and guilt being used to coerce me into doing whatever they wanted me to do, and, being the good, compliant child that I was supposed to be, and all that shit. I carried the stuffed animals around a lot, and I think the biggest thing that I realized was like, I'm an open channel, so it's like, I had nowhere to go with like the negative shit that I was receiving. I didn't know what I could do with that. I've talked about how I always felt like, since I could see the pain, that it meant I was somehow responsible for healing the pain, but literally all that did was like suck the life out of me. And it took me until I was in my 40s to figure that out. But I pick up like the stuffed animal and just hold it briefly, and it's like, I just started bawling, and it's like, I think I channeled some of that energy into it because I had nowhere else to go with it. So it was just like, I always had my stuffed animals, and I have pictures where I had like just several of them on my bed or whatever, and there's a big collection, right? And I think it was just like, I was always carrying something around, and I think it was because I didn't have anywhere else to go with this dense energy that I was picking up, so it ended up kind of inadvertently being channeled into the stuffed animals. So I did clean them. They got washed in the washing machine, and then they also got saged too, most of them. Kind of clear that before I donate it to somebody else. But there were several of them that I decided that I wanted to hang on to. And I think it is, because I also talked about how, like the gem dolls, I cleaned a bunch of those up for Gracie to play with, and she hasn't been able to play with them yet because she hasn't been around. But now, they're getting ready to move, so they're not going to take that kind of stuff either. But I felt like I had to pull 2 of them out. And the 2 that I pulled out, one, there's this character called Dance, and she's got hair kind of like mine is, with the more colors. Most of them would have like one solid color, but that one had the multicolors. And I felt like I needed to pull that one out, and this other character called Jetta, which she's got black hair with like silver streaks in it. And it was like, when I think about it, it's like, that's my my light side and my shadow aspect. But I feel like what I've been doing is kind of allowing my inner child to have space in my existence as well. Because, like, little child me was not allowed to be a child in like the normal version of childhood experience. It was like picking up all this dense bullshit from the family and literally just allowing my toxic, energetic vampire of a grandfather to suck the life out of me. So it's like, now I feel like I'm kind of having to make the younger version of me feel safe in the new awareness that I have with everything going on around me, right? And yeah. So it's like the trolls, the gem dolls, the stuffed animals, all this stuff. It's like, really, I feel like it kind of explains me in a lot of ways, like the bright and colorfulness of me. It's staring at me now. Do you have to potty now? Oh, let them out. Anyway, I think the biggest thing right now is kind of integrating the stuff I'm learning now that I'm in the situation I'm currently in, but also integrating the other versions of myself that weren't safe to exist, or weren't able to feel safe in existence because of all the energetic vampires. Yeah. I am immensely grateful that my grandfather's finally gone. But it's also kind of aggravating because now that he is not there, my mom and my grandma, and they're just kind of. It's sad, really. It's the toxic patriarch died, so now nobody else knows how to exist, and me and my brother breaking away from it is messing up the dynamic that they thought they had so well established. But yeah. Oh, the hospital thing. I think I mentioned it earlier. The last time my grandfather went in the hospital, he was in the emergency room, I think, and my brother and sister-in-law. Okay. Let me gather myself and kind of remember what was going on. So the last time, okay, he'd gone back to the nursing home the day before Thanksgiving. And, of course, that being the time that one facility, okay, if the hospital knows that somebody's going to be going to the nursing home, they would like them out of there before the holiday, right? And vice versa. So, hospital kind of pushed to get him out before Thanksgiving. So since he went back to the nursing home before Thanksgiving, it was like literally the day before, we were going to have Thanksgiving at the nursing home because they had like a little day room and said we could use it for a couple hours to have Thanksgiving with my grandfather. The man that has forever hijacked birthdays and holidays and everything to make them about him, apparently the morning of Thanksgiving, like everybody was getting ready to go over there, and he apparently, I don't know if he wasn't breathing well on his own or what had happened, but before we even got there, they were talking about sending him back to the hospital because he wasn't doing good. And of course, we get in there and, get kind of set up in the day room to have the Thanksgiving. And my mom and grandma and my aunts are all concerned, obviously, about what's going on with Daddy Dearest. And, like as I walked in, heard what was going on enough that I was just like, of course, because why would he not hijack this Thanksgiving too, right? And honestly, the way things were going around that time, I was really surprised he didn't die on Thanksgiving. Again, like, even down to my dad he talked to somebody he thought looked familiar, and it ended up he worked with the guy's brother somewhere for a while. And when my dad asked how his brother was doing, he said, he passed away on Thanksgiving, or the day after Thanksgiving last year. It's like, well, that seems kind of foreboding, right? Like, he just died at this point in time last year, right? And then my grandfather he didn't get sick or anything. He just got worse, and he was fucking 85, man. He got way more years than he even should have, since all he wasted his time doing was obsessing over death. But the only reason he got as long as he did was because he literally sucked the life out of everybody else. So they say, it's going to be a little bit before the ambulance can come get him. So just go ahead and, the family should go ahead and eat. And then, we'll get him over there, blah, blah, blah. My mom and her sisters and I think my grandma did come down to eat briefly. But, like, I was just kind of pissed the whole day, because it's like, of course, because he came back, it's like, woo, opportunity to make it about him again, right? Which it was always perpetually about him anyway, once he went in the hospital and, was then just back and forth between rehab facilities. In that last 5 months or so, I think he was at home for, like, less than 3 days. And that's what I told my mom, like, so Thanksgiving, I think that was like right 27th. It was like right at the end of the month this time around, I think. I don't know, I have to look up those details. But anyway, I remember looking it up not that long ago, because he died on December 3rd. And I don't remember. Anyway, Thanksgiving, he ends up back at the hospital. We ate over at, the day room. It's just like, this is a whole big ass waste of the day. It's like, why did we even bother doing this? We knew that there was going to be something that came up, but surely he'd be good enough for Thanksgiving and be able to have Thanksgiving dinner with the family, and nope. And I think it was something about not being able to breathe or whatever on his own. But he ended up back at the hospital, and my mom went back into living at the hospital again, because literally every time he was in the hospital, she stayed there the entire time. And when he was at a nursing home, she would get have the opportunity to go home and sleep in her own bed. And that was like the only time she got to do that, or spend any time at home for that matter. And for me, it just showed that it was proof that the man couldn't live on his own, and that literally the only reason he lasted as long as he did was because my mom would go into, you can't die, you have to stay alive forever kind of bullshit mode, and, go give him her life force so he could last another day. And then, on the Sunday before he died, that was the last time I went in there. And I've talked about how it was like this whole awkward thing because my mom had been pestering me and my brother about not being over there. Everybody else in the family was there except for us, except for not everybody was there because there's the one cousin that, he apparently said he'll be around for weddings and funerals and that's it. He was not there, but, we were told everybody was there. It's like, everybody's not there if not everybody's there. But we were kind of not making it a priority. But that afternoon, I did go over there, and I went over there specifically with the intention of telling my mother that at some point it had to be okay for that man to die. And we did have that conversation. The entire way over there, that inner voice was just like, yes, we're doing the thing. Yes, good job. And, hyping me up kind of a thing. And because that took a lot out of me to be able to do that, honestly. All right, I think they're ready to come in. Hold on. Anyway, so I told her that the fact that the man couldn't stay in any of these facilities without somebody there overnight suggested that he was not able to live on his own. And she, of course, made me out to be the bad guy for saying anything on that end. Told my brother that I was all ready to have the vigil or whatever, and it's like, was I ready for him to be gone? Yeah. Like I said, he outlived his usefulness a good 30 years ago. Hey, will you knock it off? Go do that in the other room. But yeah, because it was always about his death, So then, they're just prolonging his life and, trying to bypass the inevitable, I guess. It's like, it was going to happen one way or another. Nobody's here to live forever, so y'all can go in the other room if you're going to be all frisky now. But like when I asked what room he was in when I had already gotten there. And my mom says, like this before the conversation, obviously, Mom says, I'm so glad you're coming. He could use a hug from you. And like, it was really awkward too, because like, I never in my life hugged that man that I recall, and I've talked a lot on here about how I have never liked my family to touch me at all, like hugs, whatever. I used to this is probably where part of the issue is. My mom and her lack of maternalness, even though she just always knew she wanted to be a mom. That was her biggest goal in life, blah, blah, blah. When I was little and kind of attached to my mother, that's probably where a lot of this dense, energetic ickiness came in at, was because, I was always trying to hide behind my mother, because I thought she was safe. But then, as I later figured out, she wasn't at all, and that last time I went in to see my grandfather, and, my mom gets up and like makes this big deal about coming over to the side of the bed that I'm on and moving the table out of the way so I can get closer so I can give him a hug. And it's just like, no, I'm not doing that. She went through all this effort and then goes and sits back on the other side of the bed, and I just moved the table back over closer to him and sat down in the chair at the foot of the bed. And like, he just kept looking at me like, I think, energetically speaking, I think he absolutely knew what was going on and that I didn't give a shit. But what could he do about it? Spent all his time when I was around him, latching on the available opportunities to point out all the things that were a problem about me, all the things that made me different. And, you got a thing in your lip. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, spend some more time with this, I think, because, like I said, like when I realized at the store today that I was shrinking myself again, it's like, I feel like, okay, if you shrink your aura and allow other people that shouldn't be near you to have or to get close enough where their aura is like bigger and can impose itself, and then all at once you have these energetic cords that shouldn't be attached to you and you can't shake easily. And then that's kind of a whole thing too. This is energy stuff. Yeah. But like, when I was there that last day, my mom and my grandma, that's very rude, just kept saying, "You can't die. What are we going to do without you? We don't know how to do anything. There's so much you still need to teach us." It's like, and I was just like, that's not helpful. I said that like, I think I said that again 3 times. Like, that's not helpful. Knock it off. And then when I finally had the conversation with my mom, it was like, it has to be okay for that man to die at some point in time. And I think, like I said, I told her that like the fact that he couldn't exist in the other facilities without needing to come back to the hospital for some kind of issue was just suggested that he wasn't able to live on his own, and the only reason he was still going was because they kept pouring so much of their energy into him. So I don't know. So I got to figure out where the weak spots are in my energy here lately and fix that, because I'm over that bullshit. Especially, she's not going to stop making this whole thing about her in the time between now and the time my brother's family actually moves. It's always going to be about her. She's never going to see it any other way. They just moved to get Gracie away from her. And it's like, well, quite frankly, if they realize that she's better off without her around, then yeah, that would be the best thing to do, right? So they're doing what feel is best for their family, and I'm glad they are. And I am a little bit dreading the momentary bit of time where I'm still stuck there without my my reprieve, I guess. But it's warming up, so I'll be able to get out a lot more and take the dogs for more walks, skate a whole bunch. Try to get that. That's probably part of it too, is I haven't been skating as much, and I don't know how much I'll be able to skate before they get back from their trip to house hunt. But yeah. I watched this, or I saw this Aaron Dowdy thing last night where he mentioned how, if you're, as a little kid, you were open and really sensitive to what's going on around you, and felt that you weren't safe, that it basically pushes you up into the higher chakras where you kind of become hyper vigilant to seeing what's going on, reading everybody else's energy, and seeing where the next threat is coming from, to try to protect yourself on that end. He said you get to a point where you're all up here and disconnected from your body and feel even less safe in your body because then you aren't grounded. And it was just like, I think I talked about a bunch of that kind of stuff in my video yesterday. So it's like, of course, it's just appropriately timed. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up so I can go home, and they're not going to like that part, but I'll be back for them later, so I'll probably watch another movie. The last time I was here, I watched the Sing movies. There's only 2 of them so far, but I just watched those over and over every night that I was here and would like write. So it's like only half really watching, but it was more, I think, just spending time here with the doodle and friend. Making sure they had more time out of the cage, and that way I was doing something or had something going where I was like semi multitasking. It's like, yeah, yesterday I watched Sing 2 again. It's like, yep, just doing this again, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'll find something else, but it wasn't the only, or they weren't the only movies that I played. There's also Hotel Transylvania, and what was the other one? I think the TV show for How to Train Your Dragon. But again, since I'm spending time at my brother's house and not trying to creep myself out, horror movies aren't generally ideal if I'm not trying to creep myself out. So, plus it's a really big ass house. So if the house they talk about how Jen feels like her family is very much around her in this space and will do weird things to kind of make their presence known. It's nothing bad or anything, but it's like still making weird sounds and all that stuff. Like, well, and her mom did die in this room actually. But yeah, it's like I'm not trying to engage with random spirits while I'm just hanging out in this space. And yeah, Disney movies keep me out of the the weird mindset, watching all sorts of weird shit. I'll do that at home when I'm not worried about, I'm not really worried about anything here, but yeah, at the same time, I'm just not trying to creep myself out. Yeah, so Disney movies are, or the Illumination, but I just see the Minions. Yeah, I don't know what all there is now, but whatever. Those kind of cartoony movies, little kid movies. I did watch The Bad Guys last time. That was all right. Now I'm just rambling. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up so I can go home and eat something and get this posted and come back over here. So, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.